I wrote a note to my valedictorian that made her leave the school, with no consequences. Years ago, when I was in high school, there was a girl at the top of our class, we'll call her May. May was known for being very quiet and timid, anxious and antisocial. She had long bushy hair that reached pretty much her backside, and she always brought a messy stack of books and papers to each class, despite not needing them for anything. Everyone felt bad for her. She was seemingly incredibly intelligent but crippled by anxiety. But one day, in a class we shared, I realized she was writing answers for a test on the desk and covering them with her hair. If you write on a desk in pencil, it can be easily wiped away with your hand, and that's exactly what she did after the exam. She was a cheater. I talked to another kid in our class, James, and he said, "Oh yeah, May always cheats. Everyone pretty much knows that." She would apparently even write answers on the strewn papers in her desk pile. Nobody wanted to get someone like May in trouble, but frankly, as someone just outside the top 5 in my class, it made me livid that May could just cheat blatantly with everyone letting it slide, all the way into the valedictorian position. That makes a major difference for scholarships and everything, and we came from a pretty poor area. She was also an officer in the National Honor Society, and while I know that means nothing now, at the time I thought, wow, she has no honor, this is ridiculous. One day, in the math class me and my friend Kevin shared with May, we had a substitute teacher who didn't really care what we spent the class period doing. So I wrote, in a careful, bubbly print that was nothing like my typical handwriting, a note to May, basically saying, hey, everyone knows you cheat, and if you don't knock it off, we'll be forced to tell the National Honor Society what you did. So cringe looking back. I don't think I really would have done anything with the note. Of course, the fact that I wrote it in different handwriting says differently. But Kevin was joking that he would give the note to May, and I was joking back. But to my shock, he did give it to May, by sneakily putting it on the side of her messy desk. She noticed it eventually and must have read it. We had lunch next, and May was sobbing, literally losing it at her lunch table. The friends she sat with all encouraged her to go to the office about whatever happened, and she eventually did. I started to freak out, because I never thought she'd react like that, and I was someone who never got in trouble. My mother would kill me if I did, so I was terrified of getting called up. I just wanted May to stop cheating. Towards the end of my next class, it happened. My science teacher said I was called to the office, and I felt my soul leave my body. I went up and walked into the principal's office. Imagine my shock when he wanted to talk about something completely different. He heard from my ex's new girlfriend that I was going to beat her up, which was wildly untrue. We both laughed about it, and he said he didn't think that was true but had to check. Then he just asked casually, before you go, do you have any idea what happened in your math class earlier? I simply said no idea and tried to be convincing. He said okay, and I walked back to class. Later that day, I realized some of May's lunch table group seemed angry with me. May had gone home early, but her friends seemed ready to fight me, based on the looks I was being given. I was so anxious that they knew I had written the note. At the very end of the day, I walked into the office and asked the vice principal, my volleyball coach, if I could speak with the principal. He said the principal had already left for the day. I was terrible, and we didn't win a single game in 4 years, just so people don't think my athletic prowess saved me here. I straight up said I wrote the note to May. It was me. I lied to the principal earlier. My coach, VP, just said okay, I'll tell him tomorrow, and that was the last I ever heard of the situation. I never got in trouble. May never returned to regular classes. She was removed from the school rankings, although I recall her attending graduation and getting a diploma. Her mother was a teacher in our school system, so maybe that had something to do with it. Who knows? I graduated within the top 5, and it absolutely helped me get better scholarships. But I do often feel guilty and wonder what happened to May. From the comments, I'd put money down that she admitted to it immediately. I've wondered about this, because it just feels so weird to me that nobody ever mentioned it again. Making someone upset enough to leave school for a year and a half for unfounded reasons would surely have consequences, unless she admitted to it and the school just swept the whole thing under the rug. I don't think my coach would have covered for me or anything. We weren't that close, and he was a pretty strict vice principal.